Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Faith and Family First. I'm your host, Eva Andrade, and today, as we celebrate this week the overturn of Roe versus Wade, we've got a very special guest, Janet Grace Hochberg, who's going to give us a little bit of her testimony. She's going to talk about where she's at today, and most important, why people of faith need to stay plugged into the issue of life right here in the state of Hawaii. So let's chat about that. Janet, it is just such a pleasure and an honor to be sitting across even though we would have been in person, sitting across the table, we're sitting across each other in Zoom, and I just miss that face.
Likewise, it is just such a joy and pleasure to be sort of again face to face with you. I wish we were in person. I could give you a big hug, but this is, really wonderful, and I cherish this opportunity to spend time together again.
I just love it. And I know that we have a lot of people that watch the show that remember how hard you worked in the community to fight for life and how much you did for the state of Hawaii. So we appreciate that. And, just briefly, I know that you are now living in two places on the mainland. So you just want to give everybody a little bit of an update of who you are and where you are, and then we'll get into your story.
Would love to. Thank you. So I'm Janet Hochberg. Formerly, in the earlier days, most people know me as Janet Grace, and interestingly, they would call me the abortion lady, not because I promoted and supported abortion, but because I was fiercely passionate about helping everyone, not just women and girls, but even families and men from making the choice of abortion in an unplanned pregnancy or a time when pregnancy didn't seem to be feasible in their lives. So yes, so Janet Hochberg, formerly Janet Grace, spent 40 years in a beautiful, unrivaled, breathtaking Hawaii. And about a year and a half ago, my husband Jim, who's a religious liberty attorney, who some of you may or may not know, we felt the Lord was calling us back to the East Coast to be closer to my family, to just witness more and share the gospel with them. Which has been interesting transition. So I'm in New York from end of June until December. So I get to spend Thanksgiving and Christmas with my dad. I have a lot of siblings, and then we are in a warmer climate since this is all we really know, or knew in Florida, a really, really profoundly deep red state, which has been really cool from January to the end of June. And if I may just expound on the Florida experience, in November last year, there was a ballot initiative, Amendment 4, which would have enshrined abortion in their constitution. And you have to have a 60% majority for that to pass. And Florida defeated that bill. The people of Florida voted against enshrining abortion in their constitution. It didn't meet the 60% threshold. And to be on the winning side of this issue for once in my life, after advocating for so long, was just a insanely glorious victory. And of course, that's post-Dobbs too. So it was amazing. So yeah, so we're in New York part of the year and Florida the other part, and we're still kind of getting our bearings, but Jim is having a blast.
Well, it's interesting because we have to live vicariously through you when in Florida. You're right there on the same page in New York. Although, Jim likes to remind me that there are little pockets of conservatives in New York. So we can't throw the whole state of New York out. And you've got family there, Janet. So we'll give you guys some grace because that's where
Mahalo.
you come from. But we really appreciate all the hard work that you and your husband put into the state of Hawaii for as long as you guys have lived here, fighting for life. And of course, because we're celebrating the overturn of Roe for this
Mm,
particular week, there is a lot of rejoicing because of the hard work that went into overturning Roe. But there are a lot of blue states like Hawaii, like New York, that are still just going down that road. But we can talk public policy all day and have half of the people listening and watching like, oh my God, not this again, right? But
right.
what I want to do is I want to remind people that when we're talking about an issue like abortion, and yes, if you're watching this on YouTube, they've already put the little thing on the bottom giving, their description of abortion because they're going to think we're automatically attacking people that make that choice. But when we're doing the work we're doing, we always start with the heart and we always start with the story. And that's what I love about you. I love that you don't only fight against abortion because you know from a firsthand experience what opening that door and walking that journey is like. So much so that you poured your heart not only into your own story and giving your own testimony, but working for years to promote pregnancy resource centers because of the good work that they do. So let's take a step back. Let's go back. Let's go back to early. I was going to say young Janet, but you're always going to be young Janet to me. But
Oh, girl.
but let's go back to a long time ago when you yourself had that journey and that choice and walk us through that.
Sure. It's taken a long time for me, even though, I just turned 60. It's interesting that we would take, a trip down memory lane, which isn't really super positive. It's a little traumatic, even after gone through abortion recovery years ago. The sting and the pain of that decision will never, never, ever go away. Um, so, again, being this is the topic. Last night I was with some friends and they were talking about names of kids for their grandchildren. And one of the girls' names is Harley. And I said, if I had kids, um, my daughter and I had a daughter, her name would be Harley. And if I had a son, his name would be Davidson because we all like bikes.
That's
And
hilarious.
and then I thought to myself, you know what? I did. I did have a child. I had a little girl. And when I was 18, I got pregnant. I was in upstate New York. Abortion had been, um, federally enshrined in 1973. We know in Hawaii it was the first state to boast of legalized abortion on demand in 1970, but in New York was right after them. But about 10 years later, after elective abortion on demand became legal in all 50 states for all and any reasons, I got pregnant. My parents were just distraught. I was distraught. We just were paralyzed, not sure what to do. I come from a family of five. So I'm 18, I have a bunch of younger siblings. I have an older brother. And the only best solution for my dad, primarily, and I love my father to death, he's a great dad, was an abortion and to call Planned Parenthood and take care of the problem and the situation and make it go away. And then we can all get on, with our lives. And so that's what happened. I went down, had my abortion. My mom was with me. And I remember my mom telling me years later, that she asked the workers, is she going to be okay? And they promised my mom and reassured her that this was just a minor little procedure, nothing to worry about, and I would be just fine. It would not affect me emotionally, physically, mentally, none of those. My mom, though, to her defense, did want to keep the baby and raise her first grandchild. So I had the abortion. I was pretty confused. I did not grow up in a Christian household. So I had no biblical foundation and no real understanding there. Basically, it was a quick fix to a problem that we really didn't have any real tools or resources to help us make a different choice, such as adoption, pregnancy resource centers, and things like that. We didn't really have a strong Christian community in our family. So the best thing for me to do after the abortion, because I was pretty distraught, I was pretty angry with my parents at the time, was I joined the Navy and I thought, you know what, I gotta get out of here. I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed, I'm humiliated. I'm all of those feelings and emotions, and a million more that Planned Parenthood told my mom and promised them would never happen. So I joined the Navy. I got orders to Hawaii, a dream come true. So the abortion experience, and I remember exactly what happened to me in that room on that day, as if it happened to me yesterday. It was horrifying. But to kind of connect that with coming to Hawaii, that trauma, I was able to kind of put on the back burner and move past, because now I'm in paradise. I'm in Hawaii, but now I'm getting a new set of friends that love to party. And so I'm in the Navy, having this amazing life, but doing a little more drinking and suppressing my feelings a little bit more than I should be. So I didn't really have to think about that horrific decision that really damaged me. At a very young age, very emotionally. And so, I'm going through my Navy career and just suppressing all of my feelings with all different kinds of um uh outlets. And there were people in my command, a few ladies that were very strong Christians. They would witness to me about the Lord, and I thank them, and they invite me to church. And I just said, hey, thank you so much, but I'm not interested. I'm glad Jesus is such a great guy. I believe he was awesome. And they did not give up on me, and they kept witnessing and witnessing and witnessing. And so fast forward, I get out of the military. I continue down the slippery slope with alcohol, add some drugs into that, and so now I'm pretty numb to anything that has happened to me in the past, and trying to reinvent this new life. But I was really void and empty, as you hear all of these type of testimonies from people that have made those past type of decisions that I have. And so God, in his incredible grace and mercy, just kept putting amazing people around me. And they witnessed to me, and I eventually ended up in a treatment facility where I gave my heart to Jesus, and I never looked back. I've never picked up a drink or a drug in almost the same, well, about 10 years less than the age that my daughter would be today. So I have 34 years clean and sober, only by the grace of God, because man could not have done that for me. I tried, every doctor, every psychologist, every psychiatrist, before I surrendered to Christ, and none of them helped me. They had good intentions, but they could not deliver me from the addictions. And so I gave my heart to the Lord. I started going to church. This was about in 1997. I was introduced to Calvary Chapels, and they did what was called an annual prayer event at one of the churches. And those many, many years ago, I know now they were very pro-life congregation, as many churches in Hawaii are. And they had a segment on abortion. So I'm at this prayer meeting, and they said, we're going to show an abortion video. It's called Choice Blues. Do you remember that video? It shows a
Absolutely.
third trimester abortion. And this is going to be a little graphic. So we're asking, if you don't feel you want to stay for this portion of prayer, you're welcome to leave. But we're going to let you know again that that's going to be graphic, and we're going to show a video. And for some reason, I can really unequivocally share sincerely that in that moment, my abortion experience didn't connect when they said that. So I didn't get up and leave. I think God allowed me to not make that connection at that moment in time for a greater purpose and plan. And so I stayed. They showed the video, and I was in utter shock to think that back in the late 90s, 2000, women in states, and it was legal to dissect your baby out of your body, and to have partial birth abortions, and to put the parts of a baby in a pan to make sure you got them all out. And I was re-horrified to think that hundreds of thousands of women have had this done to them, and I was one of those victims. And then I got angry. Then I got really upset. So I fought back tears. I went home, and this is a very, very true story. I went home. I got into my room, my bedroom. I laid across my bed, and I wept and I cried for hours and hours and hours, and just asked the Lord to forgive me, because I had understood what repentance was. I'd been going to church for a while, and I thought I had repented, when I surrendered my life to Christ and confessed with my mouth that Jesus is Lord and turned from all my sins. But yet, that was something so grave in the enormity of that decision to take an innocent life. No woman wants to kill their own offspring. I can assure you of that. And to realize the enormity of what I had done, and that violation against a holy God that creates every person fearfully and wonderfully in his own image in their mother's womb, just overwhelmed me with then the regret and the shame, and all of those things started to come flooding in again. But I knew it was covered in the blood. I know that when I repented, as far as the east is from the west, that the Lord truly meant it's a done deal in his book. I knew in that moment that I had to do something to sound the alarm and to advocate for those women that were just like me, that either didn't know better, not educated on the issue, or were scared, fearful, desperate for the problem to go away. And so that's where my journey in the pro-life movement started. The guy who showed that Choice Blue video, Steve Holk, was an amazing pro-life advocate. He had started a pregnancy center called Aloha Pregnancy Care and Counseling Center. And the very next day I called him, and I said, I want to help. I have a story to tell. I don't know how this works, what I do. Can you help me help others? Can you show me? Can you teach me? How do I advocate for women who were in my position, all these years later, are still distressed over that decision? How do we heal? How do we get better? And how do we walk together in this journey to not only heal together, but to provide resources and information to the masses of women out there so they can make an informed decision? And so that's sort of how my journey began. I started volunteering at the pregnancy center, then working there. It eventually became a medical model, got an ultrasound machine. I was educating myself on the laws, on Hawaii's dismal pro-abortion legislation that was just thinking, being in the Aloha state, that minor girls could get abortions without parental notification. You know, that when I got involved, and you were involved long before me, you and Kelly. And then that's how I met you. And that was pretty awesome. And laws in Hawaii that even parents didn't even know, that even church families didn't even know. Now, I'm not pointing fingers because I didn't know, but that 14-year-olds at the time, 14-year-olds could get abortion without their parents even knowing it. And then I got angry again. And then I said, okay, I gotta try to make a difference, be a voice, help with solutions, and not be the drum of, okay, you can't have an abortion, but become more compassionate, more understanding, since I've been down that road, and let women know that they're loved no matter what. Whether you have had an abortion or you're thinking of having an abortion, we love you. And I think that's the key component that is usually missing, is that this is non-judgmental because of the um, really radical lies of what abortion is, that it's reproductive health care, that it's women's health, that women should have a right to make a decision over their own bodies. And when you start educating women and letting them know that when you're pregnant, reproduction has already begun. This isn't about women's reproductive health. You're pregnant, you're a mom already. It isn't about, I don't want to be a mom. You have your child inside of you. You're a mommy, you know, and how do we love you through this process without making you feel shameful, ashamed, guilty, to try to help remove that confusion, point you in the direction of these awesome pregnancy resource centers, which there are many now on island, that women and girls and families can go to and get much better real truth and informed options, such as adoption and different opportunities and options for their unborn children. So that's just a little tidbit of my story. It doesn't cover the whole gamut. And what an incredible, one of the most enormous, immense privileges in my life is to connect with another pregnancy center, a place for women in Waipio, where the president and founder, Sue Skinner, and Pastor Daryl started an abortion recovery program called Forgiven and Set Free. And I know that the Catholic Church has Rachel's Vineyard, which is another a post-abortion healing recovery program. But I got plugged in with Sue Skinner, that pregnancy center. I went through a really intensive, comprehensive 10-week post-abortion recovery program. And that is where my healing, my understanding, my ability to forgive myself, to forgive others, my parents, the Planned Parenthood evilness of that organization. And I don't say that because I'm not forgiving, but it really is a dark place. But where I was able to really start this journey and help other women down it, because not only did I have an abortion, but I went through a biblical based recovery program with an understanding of God Almighty and how he sees me and how he truly does wash and cover me in his blood, and how he didn't want me to go through that just to come through it, but to help others get through what they're going through because of it. And I'm forever indebted to that center. Through that work and the other centers that I've had the privilege to be a part of, I have walked with young girls, primarily a couple older women who had abortions scheduled for their unborn child. And walking through them for many, many months, ended up choosing life. And now I was looking at, and now, they have, their children are born and alive today, and they wouldn't change that for the world. I was just looking at some pictures with some girlfriends the other day of a young girl 16 years ago who came to me and said, I'm going to kill my baby. I have to have an abortion. I don't want this. I'm not going to do it. I was like, girl, you can't do it. You're going to regret it. And I read the email I sent to her, and I can't believe what I said. The email I said, she said I can use her name. Her name's Stephanie. That's all I'll say. I said, Stephanie, abortion is a wicked evil. You can't kill your baby. And then she, was like, I don't care what you say. But anyways, all that to say, she gave birth. Sue Skinner, Dr. Vivian Wong, this is like 16 years ago, walked her through this journey, gave, did ultrasounds with her. And miraculously, at the 11th hour, she had an abortion scheduled, and she canceled it and gave birth. And she kept telling us, you know what? I know I'm not going to have this baby, but if I do, I'm going to name him Job. She ended up naming him Daniel. She's had two babies since, and I still keep in touch with her. I've been out of touch for a couple of years, but I do get pictures of the kids. And so for me, that is the greatest, ultimate gift of all, to see these women so vulnerable, so abortion minded, at that last minute, choose life over death for their unborn child. And a decision they say that they're so profusely grateful that they made, because of those pregnancy centers and volunteers and men and women that go there every day to be available for them.
What I'd love for you to do is just kind of give our listeners and our viewers that last push of, why does abortion still matter today? Why do people still got to play plugged in? I mean, oh my gosh, Roe was overturned, there's so many other things happening. What is your message to people of faith on the issue of abortion and life, and why they need to stay with their antennas up?
Yeah, that's such an awesome question. I think the big reason that life is an ultimate gift from God, that we are, as I shared earlier, no pregnancy happens by mistake in God's economy. And that baby in the womb is precious and sacred in the sight of Jesus. And I know that the Holy Spirit, we know, loves to work in miracles and do extraordinary things in our lives. And abortion not only takes the life of a baby that is created again in the image of a holy God, that an abortion takes away the livelihood and the life breath of the woman that has that turns over that baby to death. And it's a violent death. There's nothing pretty about abortion. Even the abortion pill that is available on demand in grocery stores and supermarkets or CVS's today, um, those abortions are violent. Taking a pill does not make it any different than a suction abortion or a partial birth abortion. The aftermath and the fallout of abortion stays with a woman, and even husbands, or even the fathers of those babies, for the rest of their lives, and it is not ordained by God. Life is ordained by God. God said, came to give you life, and that life more abundantly. And in the next verse, it says, the devil only comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And that's what abortion does. It doesn't only kill, it steals and it robs you of your child, a family, something that God probably wanted to design in your life for his good and his glory. Get involved. But I think that what's really important is to just be very proactive in encouraging healthy pregnancies, adoption, get involved. Call Eva. How can I get involved? How can I make a difference, and change the complexion of Hawaii being a pretty radical pro-abortion state to becoming enshrined in the true spirit and gift of aloha by giving and sharing life.
Amen. And there's no, I can't even build on that. So make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button so you know every time we upload a new video. And Marcus and I will be back talking about some other great things on the future shows. So make sure that you come back. And Janet, thank you so much for sharing your mana'o with us today.
Thank you so much.
Mahalo, everybody. We'll see you next week.